Welcome to Engage Math, Pre-Algebra, Lesson 22, Problem 8, and we are simplifying expressions. So let's start with this first one where we are going to have 4 over 6. So we're going to first just reduce the fraction like we've always reduced fractions, 2 over 3. Now, there's a lot of ways we could kind of take our next steps, but I'm going to try to look at anything that is matching, like x to the third over x to the seventh. And what we could do is we could just make that 3, this is like a 3 minus a 7 is x to the negative 4. So if we want to, we could write the negative x to the negative 4 in the numerator. But I'm going to just say, hey, we know we don't want negative exponents. So what if we just put that x to the negative 4 in the denominator and make it x to the positive 4? Another way to think about it is that if you have 3 x's in the numerator and 7 in the denominator, when you simplify, you're going to be left with 4 in the denominator. Okay, so we're already done with the x's and the number in front, the coefficients. Okay, now this y to the negative 2 over y, we can bring that y to the negative 2 down to the denominator, and then we add the two exponents and we get y to the positive 3. Another way to think about it is to think of it as, it's still going to be a y, but we're going to say negative 2 minus the 1 that's on that is a y to the negative 3, but when we put it in the denominator, it's y to the positive 3. And then the z, let's think of it the same way. 1 minus 3 is negative 2, so let's put it in the denominator as z to the positive 2. Let's make that look more like a 2. Exactly, because that z doesn't even look like a z. Let's make it z to the second. So basically what you have is 2 over 3x to the fourth, y to the third, z squared. Okay, let's look at the next one. Before we start, we have to take this 2 and we have to raise everything in this parentheses to the second power. So let's start with that. And what we're going to get is 49 x to the fourth, y squared. And then that's going to get multiplied by, here we're going to multiply the 3's because we're raising x to the third power. So we get x to the ninth, and we know there's really a 1 as an exponent on that y. So 1 times 3 gives us y to the third. Now we can simply leave the 49 and then add our exponents. So we end up with 49, x is to the 13th, and y is to the 5th. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, so in this case, anything to the 0 power is just 1. So I'm going to just cancel that because it really means 3 times 1, which we just know is 3. So why bother with the x to the 0? Okay, so now the 3 over 3 just becomes 1. So they're gone. So all I have left now is y to the fourth over y to the seventh. When we subtract 4 minus 7, we get y to the negative 3. So if you want, you can first think of it as y to the negative 3 in the numerator, but then we're going to simplify it to 1 over y to the positive 3. Okay, D is going to be the quickest problem you have today. Anything to the 0 power is just 1. All right, let's look at the next one. I'm going to start with the 3x squared, which is going to give us 9x squared, because the 3 has to get squared as well, times 8y to the third over 72 x squared y to the third. All right, I'm going to change the colors just to show you everything that's going to cancel. X squared over x squared is just 1. Y to the third over y to the third is just 1. So now we have a 9 times an 8 in the numerator, which is 72. 72 over 72 is just 1 for our final answer. Okay, let's look at this next one. I think the easiest way to do this is to raise each one of these to the negative 1 power. It's not the only way to do it, but let's do it that way for right now. So we have 4 to the negative 1, because there's really a 1 as the exponent on that 4. So 1 times negative 1 gives us negative 1. Okay, so 4 to the negative 1, x to the negative 3, y to the fourth. Anything with a negative exponent is going to have to go to the other side of the fraction line to become a positive exponent. So the y to the fourth is all that can stay in the numerator, and it's going to be over 4x to the third. And that's all we can do with that one. Okay, the next few will go pretty quickly. X to the 0 is 1. This 3 is not being raised to the 0 power, so it's 3 times 1, or 3. This time, everything's being raised to the 0 power. So our answer is 1. And this time, 3 to the 0 is 1, so it's 1 times x, or x. That doesn't look much like an X, so let's improve that. And thanks for joining us today at Engaged Math.